Hi there, it's September the 4th and we're continuing our progress through the book of Ecclesiastes, in Hebrew the Megillat Kohelet, which means the scroll of the preacher. This is one who's addressing the assembly, and particularly traditionally this has been assigned to Solomon, the son of David, although it could be one of the kings following on after that. It's a royal commentary on life. And we come here to chapter 7 to 9. And at the opening of chapter 7, there's actually a Hebrew pun or a Hebrew play on words, where it says Tov Shem Kashem and Tov, which means a good name is better than good oil, which is really saying that enjoyment, just having a good time, is not necessarily the best thing. And it then goes on to say that it's more instructive to go to a funeral than it is to go partying. We might think that's strange, but when we're in grief, when we're considering things deeply about life, we maybe get more access to wisdom than when we're just having a good time. Although the preacher doesn't discourage us from having a good time, but he's saying don't be wise in your own eyes, don't try to work it all out for yourself. In fact, he talks about the inevitability of death, whoever we are, and he says no one is sinless, no one is without imperfection. At the end of chapter 7, he points to the temptations of sexual liaison of trying to pour sexuality into the hole that's there inside that we need to fill with God. And perhaps if this is Solomon writing this, he was one who was driven a lot by his sexual desires. In fact, at the end of verse 29 of chapter 7, there's an interesting statement. He says, man was made, God made man straightforward, simple, but we have made it so complicated. We have lots of inventions. We have made things so difficult for ourselves. Chapter 8 begins with asking or seeking a respect for authority, particularly for the king and for God on top of that. And in fact, later on in the chapter, the Kohelet, the preacher says, I know that all will be well with those who are in awe of God. So there's something of a connection here between our relationship to God and the way that our lives work out in the end. And in chapter 9, this theme is continued, saying that God really controls all. No one can fully reason it out. If we spend our lives trying to reason it out, we just come to frustration. There doesn't seem to be, our application of reason doesn't seem to work out at the end of the day. And in verse 9 of chapter 9 is a simple instruction: enjoy life with your spouse in the work that God has given to you. And there's something about enjoyment that is also recurrent here. Man is called to enjoy life. He's not called to try and understand everything and reason it all out. But the last little comment in chapter 9 says, don't disregard wisdom in the poor. There's an example of a poor man who could have saved a city that is under siege, but because he's poor, no one chose to listen to him. Rather, they're listening to the noise of the rulers and they're listening to the noise of the politicians, and they miss the wisdom in the poor. And he says, don't disregard the wisdom that can even be there in the poor. There's a lot in these chapters, and Ecclesiastes pours out a whole lot of advice and instruction and understanding. But the one thing that comes clearly through here is that we are to keep related to God, that God is the one who has made us, as end of chapter 7 says. God has made us, simply made us. And when we try and complicate things, life gets complicated. But as we keep coming back, as we keep submitting ourselves to God, we will find that all is well with our soul. Have a very good September the 4th.